Hi everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum on Greater Atlanta Realtors, and this week's contract tip has to do with service recommendations to a buyer. So this is you as an agent recommending various services to a buyer to help them with the process of purchasing a home. So as a professional, of course, you are going to want to have a discussion with the buyer about the home and various things that they should do throughout their due diligence period and even after throughout the purchase, even after that time frame. So for example, we know it's always a good idea for a buyer to have the house inspected by an independent home inspector. Even if that buyer is getting an FHA insured loan or a VA insured loan, those FHA and VA appraisals, they do look at the house for typically safety items, but that is not in any way, shape, or form in the place of an independent home inspector. Now here in Georgia, inspectors do not have to be licensed, but there are various certifications that an inspector can get, an ASHI certification, a KBO certification, and so forth and so on. So a buyer would definitely want to have a home inspected by a certified inspector of their choice. Also, here in Georgia, you know what they say, there are two kinds of houses, those that have termites and those that are going to get them. So that's not always the case. That's just the saying as it goes. So it would definitely be a good idea for a buyer to have the property checked out to make sure there is no active infestation by any Georgia wood infesting organisms such as termites and all the other bugs here. So that would be a good discussion to have with the buyer. Additionally, probably would be a good idea to have the roof inspected. Most home inspectors do not inspect roofs, so that would be a separate inspection. If there are any concerns regarding the structure, the foundation, so forth and so on, that would be an independent inspection for the buyer to perhaps have on the property as well. Additionally, it would be worthy to have a discussion with the buyer about having the property inspected for mold, radon, anything that could be of concern to them. Also, probably a good idea, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, for the buyer to have a survey done of the property. It is not required in our contracts anymore. It used to be several years ago, but it's still always a good idea for a buyer to know what it is, what property, what the boundaries are of the property they are buying. So that would be a service recommendation as well. In addition to having owner's title insurance, if a buyer is getting a mortgage, the mortgage company most likely is going to require that the buyer purchase a title insurance policy that covers the lender. It's always a great idea, especially here in Georgia, one of the original 13 colonies. So claims to our land go way, way, way back. And just regardless with the market and so forth and so on in the past, it's always a good idea for any purchaser to get their own title insurance that covers their portion, owner's title insurance. And unlike any insurance, well, like any insurance, this is insurance you hope you never need, but are glad you have if you do need it. Unlike other insurance policies, title insurance, you pay a premium one time for it. You don't pay an annual premium. So it's definitely a good investment and worthy of a discussion with the buyer, and definitely have the buyer talk with the closing attorney about the title policy. Another thing that a lot of buyers often don't think about is to have the house rekeyed. So once a buyer purchases a home, they really should have the house rekeyed, because you never know who has keys to that property, or what neighbors, what service people, how many keys are buried in the yard, or so under rocks, or so forth and so on. So having the house rekeyed and changing the garage door opener codes probably would be a good idea. So as a broker to an agent, these ideas are all worthy of discussion with the buyer, as these are all things a buyer, services that an agent should recommend to the buyer. Buyer doesn't always do all of these, and sometimes a buyer in everything that goes on with purchasing a home might forget that you did have that discussion. So you as an agent, you need to be able to demonstrate that you did have this discussion with the buyer and that it was the buyer's option whether they chose to have these services or not. So I am attaching here a service recommendations form that discusses all of these things, and there are a couple of blank spaces so you can fill in other items of discussion with the buyer as a service recommendation. And then the buyer checks yes or no, they did choose to do those services. Then there is hold harmless agreement that states all parties agree to indemnify and hold agent and brokerage harmless from and against all claims, injuries, suits, and damages arising out of the party's decision with respect to the above choices. So I am going to attach this here for Maximum One agents. This is included in the reference section of Paperless Pipeline. And it has all of those things we discussed. I choose to get a Georgia wood infestation clearance letter and bond, yes or no. So you check whether the buyer does choose to do that or no. You sign it, the buyer signs it, and then you'll have a record of that discussion. Now, another thing, when recommending service providers, you definitely want to make sure that it is the buyer's choice of which service provider they choose, which inspector they choose, so forth and so on. So as an agent, you'll want to give them access to more than one service provider and let the buyer, throughout their own due diligence period or buyer's right to terminate period, do their own due diligence on the property. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this contract tip helps you out. Service tip helps you out. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.